To make the bread part of the toast, take your cream coloured yarn and a 5mm crochet hook. So you want to start by doing a chain of 16 stitches. Once we have done that chain, we're going to turn our work and we're going to skip the first stitch along from our hook. So we're going to work into the second stitch along, and in that second stitch we just want to do a single crochet. And for the rest of the stitches along this chain, we're just going to continue doing a single crochet into every single stitch. At the end of the round, you are going to chain 1 and turn your work, and then we're going to repeat what we just did. So we're going to do a single crochet in every single stitch for 12 rounds. After our 12 rounds, instead of chaining 1 and then turning our work, we are going to chain 3 and then turn our work, and then we are going to do 17 single crochets. So that'll be 15 single crochets across the main body of the work like we have done previously, as well as an additional 2 single crochets in that chain 3 we just created. And then when we get to the very last stitch in our row, we are going to want to do a single crochet in that, and then at the very end we are going to work an increase into that last stitch. So this will give us the 2 extra stitches at the end of the row like we did on the other side. So now we're going to do a single crochet in every stitch for 4 rounds, and you just want to make sure that you're doing 19 stitches for these rows to account for the extra 2 stitches we have protruding at either edge of the bread. So after you've finished these 4 rows, you just want to cut off your yarn and tie it off in the way you would do normally. So we want to be making 2 of these pieces of bread, so that's one for the front and one for the back. After you have made both, you can then insert your safety eyes. So I inserted mine in between rounds 7 and 8, and 4 stitches from the edge of the work. And make sure you put the safety backing on the back of the safety eyes. We're now going to sew a smiler on, so you want about a 15cm piece of black chunky yarn and your yarn needle. And then working in through the back of the work, you're going to pull your yarn through, making sure you leave a tail at the back. You're going to reinsert your hook next to the other eye, making sure it's symmetrical on both sides, and then pull your yarn through. And as you can see, this kind of creates a sort of frowny face. It doesn't look particularly happy. So what we're going to do is reinsert our hook halfway between those eyes and about 1 round beneath where we just created that smile. We're going to pull that line down so it definitely creates a defined smile rather than a line for the mouth. And we're going to reinsert our hook and pull it all the way through, and that will be our smile completed. So if you turn over the work, you can then just tie a knot in the back to fasten off the black yarn. You don't need to worry about weaving in ends because this will be hidden in the centre of our work. We are now going to follow a similar method to do some blush or some rosy cheeks. So I just got some pink yarn. I'm going to insert it through the back next to one of the eyes, pull it through, making sure to leave a tail, and then reinsert it underneath the eye. We're going to fasten it off at the back in the same way we did with the mouth. You want to make sure you do this both sides, under both eyes. Now to make the crust of the bread, you want to have a darker brown yarn and use the same crochet hook. So to create the crust, you want to do a chain of 75 stitches. So after you have done your chain of 75, you are going to do a single crochet for 2 rounds. So there's a single crochet into every single stitch for 2 rounds. I don't know why, but I somehow managed to film this section in slow motion, so I've had to speed the clip up, which is why it looks a bit strange. But if you just make sure that you do a single crochet into every single one of these 75 stitches for 2 rounds. After you've done your 2 rounds, it should look something like this. So you can tie off the end of your yarn. I cut quite a long length of yarn at the end because we're going to use this to sew onto the bread. So we're going to take one of our pieces of bread, it doesn't matter which, it should look the same both sides if you use the back piece. Using our yarn needle, I like to insert the yarn needle into the very corner piece of our bread and then pull the yarn all the way through. And then what you're going to do is insert your needle into one piece of the bread or one piece of the crust and then pull your needle all the way through. And you're going to follow this pattern of inserting the needle into the bread, the toast, pulling it all the way through, all the way around the crust. So we're going to make sure that the crust is nice and secure and attached to the bread all the way around the length of it. As you can see at the end of attaching, there is a little gap where we need to join the crust together. So we're going to use the same method, inserting our needle into 2 stitches on the 2 pieces we want to join together and pulling the yarn all the way through. So you want to do this all the way along that gap just to make sure it is all nice and joined together and there are no holes in the work. So we have now securely fastened one piece of bread onto our crust, so it's now time to work on the other piece. Now this is the important part, you want the face to be facing inwards towards the work because we're going to turn the work inside out at the end. So you want to be seeing the back of the face towards you, or if you've already worked the face, then you want to make sure just to turn what you've already done inside out. So you just place the piece of bread on top of where we finished, and using our yarn needle we are just going to insert it into that very corner of the bread like what we've just done. So I'm just going to fasten my crust with one more stitch just to make sure it's nice and secure because there's a bit of a gap. And then I'm going to attach it to that corner of the first piece of bread. And then we're going to work all the way around the piece of bread. We're going to leave the very bottom piece open though, So we're going to secure it all the way around the top, but leave the very bottom piece of the bread open so that we can turn it inside out later. So as you can see, we've now worked all the way around the sides and the top, and we've left the bottom piece of the bread open. So this is where we're going to turn it inside out. It might be a bit fiddly because it's quite small and tight stitches. If we turn it inside out, we should then be able to see the face towards us, and it just creates a neater edge where we sew the pieces together. And this is where I'm also going to take the opportunity to stuff my toast together. So using the Polyfill, I'm just going to stuff my bread. I don't make it too firm, I like it nice and loose. If you want yours more firm, you can use more Polyfill to do so. We are then going to continue sewing along the bread and the crust to fasten up that very bottom piece. So we're going to use the same method we have been doing all the way along. So we're going to be inserting our needle into one stitch on the bread, one stitch on the crust, and then pulling it all the way through. And you want to do this until there are no gaps left in your piece of work. So when you reach the end, I'm just going to pick up one stitch with my needle, pull it through, and then we're just going to use this to tie a small knot in the work so it doesn't come unravelled. So I just pull my needle through the back of that loop, and I make sure it's nice and tight so you can't see it from the outside. And then I just insert my needle and then pull it through a random place in the crust. So this just helps to further secure the yarn so it doesn't come unravelled. I like to do this just a couple of times. You don't have to do it a couple of times, one is sufficient, but because I had quite a lot of yarn left, I decided to do it a couple of times, and it just helps to make it even more secure. And then once you're happy that it's secure, you can just use your scissors and cut off whatever yarn is left. And then once you have finished cutting off your yarn, hopefully you should have a piece of bread or a piece of toast that looks something just like this.